The unexpected encounter. Amara Jefferson prided herself on the art of making people feel seen. As a waitress at Bernie's Homestyle Diner, a small family-owned spot nestled in the heart of Oakland, California, she had mastered the delicate balance of serving food with warmth and keeping a professional distance. The diner wasn't flashy, but it had character: red vinyl booths, checkered floors, and the faint scent of coffee that never quite left your clothes. Bernie's was more than just a job for Amara. It was her anchor. Amara had grown up just a few blocks away, in a neighborhood where dreams were often set aside for the reality of making ends meet. At 28, she had carved out a life she could be proud of. Nothing extravagant, but honest work and a reputation for kindness that brought customers back, week after week. To many regulars, Amara wasn't just a waitress. She was the beating heart of the diner. On a crisp Thursday evening, the kind where the setting sun painted the city in hues of orange and pink, Amara was busy refilling coffee mugs and exchanging small talk with her regulars. There was Ms. Vera, an 80-something widow who lived for Amara's stories. Ron, a cab driver who swore Bernie's pies kept him sane. And Greg, a construction worker with a penchant for bad jokes. For Amara, these people weren't just patrons, they were family. As she set a fresh slice of apple pie in front of Ms. Vera, the familiar jingle of the diner's doorbell cut through the soft hum of chatter. Amara glanced up, her welcoming smile at the ready. But the sight that greeted her wasn't what she expected. A tall figure in a gray hoodie and sneakers stepped inside, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap. He moved with an ease that suggested he didn't want to draw attention, but something about his presence was magnetic. For a moment, Amara couldn't place him. Then it clicked. It was Stephen Curry. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't a basketball fanatic, but even she knew who Steph Curry was, the Golden State Warriors star player, a name that transcended sports. Amara's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her apron. Steph Curry, in Bernie's. She wanted to believe it was a coincidence, but the thought of him wandering into their humble little diner felt surreal. The room buzzed softly as other patrons noticed him. Whispers began to ripple through the space like tiny waves. Ms. Vera squinted through her glasses, whispering, "Is that who I think it is?" Ron, sitting at the counter, gave a low whistle. "Never thought I'd see the day." Amara, determined to remain professional, smoothed her apron and approached him. She put on her warmest smile. "Good evening. Welcome to Bernie's. What can I get for you tonight?" Steph looked up, his sharp eyes meeting hers. There was something in his gaze, something unassuming, almost tired but kind. "Just a coffee," he said, his voice low but unmistakably friendly. "And, whatever pie you recommend." Amara nodded, her smile growing. Coffee and pie, coming right up. As she turned to prepare his order, she noticed the buzz hadn't died down. The regulars were whispering, some sneaking glances, others outright staring. One man, a middle-aged regular named Earl, wasn't so discreet. Earl was a loud, opinionated fixture of the diner, known for his love of basketball and his unwavering loyalty to the Sacramento Kings. Seeing Steph Curry in his space was clearly rubbing him the wrong way. Amara felt a twinge of nervousness as Earl leaned over to Ron, muttering something she couldn't quite catch. Whatever it was, it made Ron chuckle and shake his head. She focused on her task, pouring a fresh cup of coffee and selecting the best slice of pecan pie from the display case. Balancing the plate and mug on a tray, she made her way back to Steph's table. "Here you go," she said, setting the coffee and pie in front of him with practiced ease. "Enjoy." "Thanks," he said, flashing her a small, appreciative smile before turning his attention to the window. For a moment, it seemed like he was lost in thought, his fingers idly tracing the rim of the coffee mug. Amara couldn't help but watch him for a moment longer than she should have. There was something almost vulnerable about him, sitting there alone, away from the world that seemed to demand so much from him. But the peace didn't last. Earl, emboldened by his grudge against the Warriors, pushed back his chair with a screech and sauntered over to Steph's table. Amara's stomach tightened. She recognized the look on Earl's face. It was the same one he wore whenever he was gearing up for an argument. "Excuse me," Earl began, his voice carrying across the room. "You're Steph Curry, right?" Steph looked up, his expression polite but guarded. "That's right." Earl crossed his arms, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Thought so. You know, not everyone in this city's a Warriors fan. Some of us remember when basketball was about the game, not the money." The air in the diner grew tense. Amara froze, her hand tightening around the coffee pot she'd been holding. Steph didn't rise to the bait. "I respect that," he said simply. Earl wasn't satisfied. "Yeah, respect's easy to say when you're sitting on millions. Tell me, Curry, how much of that money actually goes to people who need it, or are you too busy counting it to notice?" The word hung heavy in the air. Amara felt a surge of anger on Steph's behalf. Earl's tone wasn't just critical, it was cruel. She glanced at Steph, who was sitting calmly, his expression unreadable. Before she could stop herself, she stepped forward. "Earl," she said, her voice steady but firm, "that's enough." Earl turned to her, eyebrows raised. "Oh, come on, Amara. You really gonna defend him? What's he done for you?" Amara drew a deep breath, her gaze steady. "It's not about what he's done for me. It's about what he's done for people who need it. Scholarships, charities, community programs. He's made a difference." Earl snorted. "Yeah, and I bet it's all for show. You think guys like him care about regular folks. I think actions speak louder than words." Amara shot back. "And from where I'm standing, he's done more than most." The diner fell silent. All eyes were on them now. Amara's cheeks burned, but she didn't look away. Steph, for his part, was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. Earl grumbled something under his breath and returned to his seat, clearly displeased. Amara's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stand tall. She didn't regret defending Steph, even if it meant upsetting a regular like Earl. As the tension in the diner began to ease, Amara noticed Bernie, the diner's owner, watching her from the kitchen doorway. His expression was unreadable, but she could sense the storm brewing. "Amara," he called, his voice low and sharp. "A word, please." Her stomach sank. She knew that tone, and it wasn't good. Steph glanced at her as she passed by his table. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "You didn't have to do that." Amara managed a weak smile. Someone had to. Little did she know, her decision to stand up for him would change her life forever. The consequences of courage. Amara followed Bernie into the cramped office at the back of the diner. The space was barely large enough to hold a desk piled with receipts, an old swivel chair, and a filing cabinet that had seen better days. The walls were lined with faded pictures of smiling patrons, but tonight the office felt anything but warm. Bernie shut the door behind them, his expression grim. "What was that out there?" he asked, his voice sharp. Amara crossed her arms, trying to mask the nervous tremor in her hands. "I was standing up for someone who didn't deserve to be insulted." Bernie let out a heavy sigh and sank into his chair. He rubbed his temples as if warding off a headache. "Amara, you've been with us for 3 years. You know how this place works. Earl and people like him, they're the backbone of Bernie's. They're here every week, rain or shine. You think Steph Curry's going to come back here after tonight? No, but Earl will." Amara's jaw tightened. "So what, Bernie? I'm supposed to let a customer humiliate someone just because he spends more money here? You're supposed to keep the peace," Bernie shot back. "That's part of your job. You're a great waitress, Amara, one of the best I've ever had. But tonight you crossed a line. Earl's been coming here since before you were even born. Now he's angry, and if we lose him and his friends, it'll hurt the diner." Amara's heart sank. She understood the logic, but it felt wrong. So my job is to just let people like Earl say whatever they want, no matter how hurtful. Your job, Bernie said, his voice firm, is to make sure every customer feels welcome. You took sides tonight, and now I'm left cleaning up the mess. Amara's voice trembled as she replied, I didn't take sides. I stood up for what was right. Bernie leaned back in his chair, his face lined with frustration. Look, I got to think about the bigger picture. Earl's not just one customer. He's part of a group that's been keeping this place afloat for years. If I have to choose between one waitress and a handful of regulars, I'm sorry, Amara, but the choice is clear. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. You're firing me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Bernie hesitated, his expression softening for a moment. I don't want to do this, but you've put me in an impossible position. I'll give you 2 weeks' pay as severance, and I'll write you a glowing recommendation. But after tonight, I think it's best if we part ways. Amara felt a lump rising in her throat, but she refused to let the tears fall. She straightened her spine and looked Bernie in the eye. I've given this diner everything I have for 3 years. I've worked double shifts, covered for people who didn't show up, and always treated every customer with respect, even when they didn't deserve it. But if standing up for someone means losing my job, then so be it. Bernie's expression flickered with guilt, but he didn't say anything. Amara turned and walked out of the office, her head held high. The weight of what had just happened didn't fully hit her until she stepped out into the dining area. The chatter in the diner had quieted, but the tension lingered. Earl and his friends sat at their table, talking in low voices, while other patrons cast her sideways glances. Amara grabbed her bag and her coat from the break room, avoiding the curious stares of her coworkers. As she walked toward the front door, she heard a voice behind her. Amara, wait. She turned to see Steph Curry standing near his table, his coffee untouched and the slice of pie barely touched. He looked genuinely upset, his brow furrowed. What happened back there? He asked softly. Amara forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Let's just say not everyone appreciates honesty. Steph's gaze was steady, his expression unreadable. You shouldn't have to lose your job for standing up for someone. It's not your fault, Amara said quickly. I made a choice, and I stand by it. Besides, this isn't the first time I've had to start over. There was something in her tone, a mixture of pride and weariness, that made Steph hesitate. Starting over doesn't mean it's fair, he said. And it doesn't mean you deserve it. Amara shrugged. Fairness doesn't pay the bills. Steph reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. If you ever need anything at all, call this number. It's my foundation. We help people in all kinds of situations, and I'd like to help you. Amara hesitated before taking the card. She didn't know if she'd ever use it, but the gesture meant more than she could express. Thank you, she said softly. Steph nodded, his expression earnest. The world needs more people like you, Amara. Don't let anyone make you feel like you did the wrong thing. With that, he turned and left the diner, leaving behind a room full of stunned patrons. Amara stood there for a moment, clutching the card in her hand. She didn't know what her next step would be, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let this moment define her. The next morning. The next day, the reality of her situation hit hard. Amara woke to the sound of her alarm, the same way she had every morning for the past 3 years. But today, there was no reason to get up. No shift to prepare for, no familiar faces waiting for her at the diner. The silence of her tiny apartment was deafening. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the card Steph had given her the night before. Part of her wanted to call the number immediately, to see if his offer of help was genuine. But another part of her, the part that had learned to be fiercely independent, hesitated. She didn't want to seem like she was asking for a handout. Instead, she spent the morning sending out resumes to every restaurant and cafe she could think of. By noon, she had a list of places to visit in person, hoping to land a new job quickly. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and her savings wouldn't stretch far. As she prepared to leave, there was a knock at her door. Amara frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, she found a delivery person holding a large envelope. "Amara Jefferson?" the man asked. "That's me," she replied, taking the envelope. "Have a good day," the man said before walking away. Amara closed the door, her heart pounding. She opened the envelope carefully, her hands shaking. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter was short but heartfelt. "Dear Amara, sometimes the world can feel unjust, but it's people like you who remind me there's still good in it. You stood up for me when you didn't have to, and that meant more than I can say. Please accept this as a small token of my gratitude, not as charity, but as recognition of your courage. Keep being the incredible person you are. Sincerely, Steph Curry." Amara stared at the check, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't a small amount. It was enough to cover her rent for several months and then some. For the first time in days, tears spilled down her cheeks. But this time, they weren't from sadness. They were from hope. She realized that her life was about to change, and this was only the beginning. A new beginning. Amara sat at her tiny kitchen table, the check from Steph Curry resting in front of her like a lifeline. Her mind buzzed with questions. Why had he done this for her? What had she done to deserve such generosity? She felt a mixture of gratitude, disbelief, and a tinge of guilt. Accepting help, even when offered so graciously, had never come easily to her. She was the kind of person who worked through her struggles, no matter how steep the climb. But this wasn't just about her anymore. Her bills were piling up, her landlord wasn't exactly lenient, and her prospects for a new job weren't promising. She sighed, carefully folding the letter and tucking it away in a drawer. The check would help her stay afloat, but she couldn't rely on it forever. She needed a plan, a fresh start. That afternoon, armed with copies of her resume, Amara set out to find work. The streets of Oakland buzzed with their usual energy, vendors selling street food, artists displaying their wares, and commuters rushing to catch the next bus. Amara stopped at every diner, cafe, and restaurant she could find. Some places took her resume with polite indifference. Others didn't bother hiding their lack of interest. By the end of the day, her optimism was waning. She had visited nearly a dozen establishments, but no one seemed to be hiring. As she walked back to her apartment, her feet aching and her spirits low, she passed a community center she hadn't noticed before. The sign above the entrance read, East Side Empowerment Center. Curious, Amara paused. The center was bustling with activity, kids running around, volunteers organizing supplies, and a group of teenagers shooting hoops on a small basketball court. She lingered near the entrance, watching the scene unfold. There was something warm and inviting about the place, a sense of purpose that resonated with her. "Can I help you?" a voice asked. Amara turned to see a woman in her mid-40s standing nearby. She had kind eyes and wore a name tag that read Linda, Program Director. "Oh, I was just looking," Amara said, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "This place seems amazing." Linda smiled. "It's a little chaotic, but we like to think we're making a difference. Are you interested in volunteering? We're always looking for extra hands." Amara hesitated. Volunteering wouldn't pay her bills, but something about the center called to her. "I just lost my job," she admitted. "I was actually out looking for work, but I don't know. Maybe I could help out for a bit." Linda's smile widened. "We could definitely use someone like you. Why don't you come inside and take a look around?" Amara followed Linda through the building, her curiosity growing with every step. The center was a hive of activity. There was a room where volunteers were tutoring kids, a kitchen where meals were being prepared for families in need, and a gymnasium that echoed with laughter and the thud of basketballs. "This is our youth program," Linda explained as they passed the gym. "We try to keep kids off the streets by giving them a safe space to learn, play, and grow. It's not perfect, but it's something." Amara felt a pang of admiration. She thought about the kids she'd seen in her neighborhood, some of whom had fallen into dangerous paths because they didn't have a place like this. "This is incredible," she said. "I'd love to help, even if it's just for a little while." Linda handed her a clipboard with a volunteer sign-up sheet. "Great. We're having an event tomorrow. A career fair for the teens. If you're free, we could use some help setting up and running the booths." Amara smiled, a flicker of excitement sparking in her chest. "I'll be here." The career fair. The next morning, Amara arrived at the center early, eager to make herself useful. Linda greeted her warmly and handed her a list of tasks. Amara threw herself into the work, arranging tables, organizing pamphlets, and setting up snacks. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of purpose. The center buzzed with energy as volunteers and local professionals arrived to share their experiences with the teens. By noon, the event was in full swing. Amara found herself stationed at a booth about careers in hospitality, drawing on her years of experience at the diner. She talked to groups of curious teens, answering their questions about customer service, management, and the importance of building relationships with people. "Do you like being a waitress?" a girl named Tasha asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Amara smiled. "I did. It's hard work, but there's something special about connecting with people, making them feel cared for. It taught me a lot about patience and empathy." Tasha nodded thoughtfully. "I want to do something like that. Maybe open my own cafe someday." "You can absolutely do that," Amara said, her voice firm. "It's all about working hard, believing in yourself, and learning as much as you can." As the day went on, Amara noticed a familiar figure enter the gym. Her breath caught. It was Steph Curry. He was dressed casually, but his presence commanded attention. The teens immediately flocked to him, their faces lighting up with excitement. Amara stood frozen, unsure whether to approach him. But before she could decide, Steph spotted her and made his way over. His smile was warm and genuine. "Amara," he said, "I didn't expect to see you here." She laughed nervously. "I could say the same about you." Steph gestured around the gym. "This is one of the programs my foundation supports. I like to check in when I can." Amara's heart swelled with admiration. She had defended him in the diner because she believed in his work, but seeing it firsthand made her respect him even more. "This place is amazing," she said. "I just started volunteering, but I already feel like I belong here." Steph's smile widened. "That's great to hear. The center could use someone like you." For the next hour, Amara watched as Steph interacted with the kids, answering their questions, signing autographs, and even joining them on the basketball court. His genuine care for the community was evident in every gesture, every word. Amara couldn't help but feel inspired. As the event wound down, Linda approached Amara with a clipboard in hand. "You've been incredible today," she said. "Have you ever thought about working in community outreach? We're looking for a part-time coordinator." Amara blinked, caught off guard. "You mean a job?" Linda nodded. "It's not a lot of hours to start, but it's something. You clearly have a gift for connecting with people, and I think you'd be a great fit." Tears pricked the corners of Amara's eyes. She hadn't expected this. A chance to rebuild, to make a difference. "I'd love that," she said, her voice trembling. A chance to shine. Over the next few weeks, Amara settled into her new role at the center. The work was challenging but rewarding. She organized events, coordinated volunteers, and helped kids find opportunities they never thought possible. Every day, she felt like she was making a difference. Steph visited the center regularly, and each time, he made a point to check in with Amara. Their conversations grew longer, their connection deeper. She found herself opening up to him about her dreams, her struggles, and her hopes for the future. One evening, as they stood in the gym watching a group of kids play basketball, Steph turned to her and said, "You know, Amara, you're a natural at this. You've got something special." Amara looked at him, her heart full. I think I just needed the right place to shine." Steph smiled, and in that moment, Amara realized something important. Losing her job at the diner had felt like the end of the world, but it had led her here, to a place where she could truly make a difference, surrounded by people who believed in her. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Stepping into purpose, Amara had never imagined her life taking the direction it now had. Just a few weeks ago, she had been a waitress in a modest diner, her life defined by routine and the small joys of everyday connections. Now she was a part of something much bigger, helping kids and families find hope and opportunity through the Eastside Empowerment Center. Her new job as a part-time coordinator was more than just a paycheck. It was a calling. Every day was different. Some days, she worked with local schools to organize tutoring programs. On others, she planned community meals for families in need. What she loved most, though, was working directly with the teens. Many of them reminded her of herself at their age, full of potential but unsure of how to channel it. One of the kids who stood out was Jamal, a 16-year-old with a love for basketball and a chip on his shoulder. Jamal had talent, real talent, but he struggled to stay focused. He often skipped classes and clashed with authority figures, his anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Amara saw in him the kind of fire that could burn bright if it was given the right direction. "Jamal," she said one afternoon as he sat on the bleachers after a pickup game, "you've got something special. But talent alone isn't enough. You have to work for it." Jamal shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "What's the point? Even if I'm good, it's not like I'm gonna make it. People like me don't get those chances." Amara sat down beside him. "I know it feels that way sometimes. But let me tell you something. The world is full of people who've had it just as hard, maybe harder, and they've made it because they didn't give up. You've got people here who believe in you, Jamal. You've got me." He glanced at her, his expression softening for a moment. "You really think I could make it?" "I don't just think," she said firmly. "I know. A surprise opportunity." One afternoon, as Amara was finalizing plans for a community fundraiser, Steph Curry walked into her office. His visits to the center were always a highlight, but today he looked particularly energized. "Got a minute?" he asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Of course," Amara said, setting her clipboard aside. Steph stepped inside, holding a tablet. "I've been thinking about how we can expand the work we're doing here. There's so much untapped potential, especially with the kids in the basketball program. But to do that, we need someone who understands the community and can help lead the charge." Amara tilted her head, intrigued. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Steph began with a grin, "that I want you to take on a bigger role. Full-time. You'd be overseeing not just the programs here, but also the expansion of similar initiatives in other parts of the city." Amara's jaw dropped. "You want me to run the program?" "You're already doing most of it," Steph said with a shrug. "You've got the vision, the passion, and the trust of the kids and the community. It's yours if you want it." The offer felt surreal. Amara had spent her life working hard, often in the shadows, without recognition or reward. Now, here was one of the most famous athletes in the world, offering her a chance to lead something transformative. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say yes," Steph said simply. Amara hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Yes. Rising to the challenge. Taking on a leadership role came with its challenges. Amara found herself juggling budgets, coordinating with city officials, and managing a growing team of volunteers and staff. There were days when the pressure felt overwhelming, but she reminded herself why she was doing this: for the kids, the families, and the community that had shaped her. One of her first initiatives was expanding the basketball program into a mentorship platform. She enlisted local professionals, chefs, engineers, artists, and entrepreneurs to pair up with the teens, teaching them life skills and helping them explore career paths. The program quickly became a success, drawing in more participants and even gaining media attention. Jamal, in particular, began to thrive under the mentorship of a retired basketball coach named Coach Reddy. The once resentful teen transformed into a focused young man, showing up early to practice and excelling in his schoolwork. Seeing his growth reminded Amara of why she had accepted Steph's offer: recognition and reconnection. One evening, as Amara was reviewing grant proposals in her office, Linda knocked on the door. "You've got visitors," she said with a smile. Amara looked up, confused. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she walked into the lobby, she froze. Standing there were several of her former coworkers from Bernie's diner, including Greg and Ms. Vera. Behind them was a figure she hadn't seen in weeks: Bernie himself. "What are you all doing here?" Amara asked, her voice laced with surprise. "We heard about what you've been doing," Ms. Vera said, her eyes twinkling with pride. "It's all over the news, Amara. You're making a real difference." Greg nodded. "You've always been special, but now everyone else knows it too." Bernie stepped forward, his face a mix of regret and admiration. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I was wrong to let you go. I didn't see your potential back then, but I see it now. You're doing something incredible here, and I couldn't be prouder." Amara felt a lump in her throat. She had carried the pain of losing her job for weeks, but hearing Bernie's words brought a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot." A night to remember. A few weeks later, the center hosted its biggest fundraiser yet, a gala dinner aimed at raising money for its expanding programs. Amara was at the heart of it all, overseeing every detail and ensuring everything ran smoothly. The event was a resounding success, with local businesses and philanthropists stepping up to support the cause. Toward the end of the evening, Steph took the stage to address the attendees. "This center represents hope," he said, "and the person who embodies that hope more than anyone else is Amara Jefferson. Her leadership, dedication, and vision have transformed this place into something extraordinary. Let's give her the recognition she deserves." The room erupted into applause as Amara was ushered onto the stage. She stood there, humbled and overwhelmed, as Steph handed her the microphone. "I never imagined my life taking this path," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "But I've learned that sometimes the hardest moments in our lives lead us to our greatest opportunities. I'm so grateful for this community, for the kids who inspire me every day, and for people like Steph who believe in second chances." As she looked out at the crowd, she saw familiar faces: Jamal, Linda, Bernie, and even Earl, the regular from Bernie's diner who had sparked it all. Life had a way of coming full circle, and tonight, Amara felt the weight of her journey lifting. The applause that followed wasn't just for her. It was for the hope she represented, the lives she had touched, and the future she was helping to shape. Amara had found her purpose, and there was no turning back. Breaking new ground. The night of the gala marked a turning point for Amara. The success of the event not only raised critical funds for the East Side Empowerment Center, but also cemented her role as a leader in the community. Yet, with this newfound recognition came a surge of responsibilities and challenges that she couldn't have foreseen. The next morning, Amara was back at the center, poring over spreadsheets in her modest office. The money raised during the gala was significant, but managing the logistics of how it would be spent was a delicate task. Every dollar needed to count. She had big plans, expanding the youth programs, upgrading the basketball court, and offering new scholarships, but she also wanted to ensure the center remained a haven for everyone in the community. As she worked, a knock on her door broke her focus. It was Jamal, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Always," Amara said, gesturing for him to come in. Jamal sat down across from her, his usual bravado replaced with nervous energy. "I wanted to thank you," he said, looking down at his hands. "For everything. for not giving up on me." Amara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're the one who's done the work, Jamal. I just gave you a little push." He looked up at her, his eyes earnest. "Coach Reggie says I got a real shot at getting a scholarship, but I don't know if I'm ready. What if I mess it up?" Amara leaned forward, her voice firm but gentle. "Listen to me, Jamal. You are ready. You've worked hard for this, and you deserve every opportunity that comes your way. But more importantly, you don't have to do this alone. We're all here to support you." Jamal nodded, a small smile breaking through his uncertainty. "Thanks, Miss Amara. That means a lot." As he left her office, Amara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Moments like this reminded her why she had taken on this role, why she fought so hard for these kids. They weren't just statistics or charity cases. They were people with dreams and potential, and she was determined to help them realize both. Expanding the vision. With the gala's success behind her, Amara turned her attention to a new project, building a career pathway center. The idea had been sparked during the career fair, where she had seen firsthand how hungry the teens were for guidance and opportunities. She envisioned a space where they could learn practical skills, explore different career paths, and connect with mentors who could inspire them. The challenge was immense. Amara needed to secure additional funding, find a suitable location, and rally the community to support the initiative. It was a daunting task, but she was determined. One of her first steps was to reach out to Steph Curry. He had become more than just a benefactor. He was a partner in her mission. Over coffee at a local cafe, she laid out her vision. "I want to create a place where kids can see what's possible," she explained. "A place where they can learn everything from coding to culinary arts, from engineering to entrepreneurship. But I need help to make it happen." Steph listened intently, nodding as she spoke. "This is a big idea, Amara. But I think it's exactly what the community needs. Let's do it." With his backing, Amara gained access to resources and connections she could never have imagined. Steph introduced her to corporate sponsors, philanthropists, and city officials who shared her passion for creating opportunities for underprivileged youth. The roadblocks. Despite the momentum, not everything went smoothly. Amara faced resistance from some corners of the community. A few local business owners were skeptical of the project, worried that it would divert attention and resources from other initiatives. Others questioned whether the Career Pathways Center would actually benefit the kids, or if it was just another well-intentioned idea that wouldn't deliver results. One particularly contentious town hall meeting left Amara feeling deflated. She had presented her plans with her usual enthusiasm, but the room had been divided. Some residents voiced concerns about the cost and the potential for failure. One man even questioned her qualifications. "Who are you to lead something like this?" he had asked bluntly. "You're just a waitress." The words stung, but Amara held her ground. "I may have started as a waitress," she replied, her voice steady, "but that doesn't define who I am or what I'm capable of. What defines me is my commitment to this community and my belief in its potential. And I'm not going to stop fighting for that." Her response earned scattered applause, but the doubts lingered in her mind long after the meeting ended. A show of strength. The setbacks only fueled Amara's determination. She doubled down on her efforts, working late into the night to refine her plans and address the community's concerns. She organized smaller, more intimate meetings with local stakeholders, listening to their feedback and incorporating their ideas into the project. Her perseverance began to pay off. One by one, she won over skeptics, convincing them of the center's value and potential impact. By the time she secured a lease on an old warehouse that would house the Career Pathways Center, the tide had turned. The community rallied behind her, offering their time, skills, and resources to help transform the space. Construction began in earnest, with volunteers painting walls, installing equipment, and creating classrooms and workshops. The process was grueling but deeply rewarding. Every nail hammered, every wall painted, felt like a step closer to a brighter future for the kids she cared so deeply about. The grand opening. After months of hard work, the Career Pathways Center was finally ready. The grand opening was a celebration of everything the community had accomplished together. The once dilapidated warehouse had been transformed into a vibrant hub of learning and opportunity, complete with state-of-the-art classrooms, a tech lab, a fully equipped kitchen, and even a recording studio. As the ribbon was cut, Amara stood at the front of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. She looked around at the sea of familiar faces, Jamal, Linda, Steph, and so many others who had been part of this journey. The applause was deafening. But what moved her most was the sight of the kids exploring the center, their faces lit with excitement and wonder. One young girl approached Amara, clutching a sketchpad. "Miss Amara, do you think I could learn how to be a fashion designer here?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. Amara knelt down to her level, her smile radiant. "Absolutely," she said. "You can be anything you want to be." In that moment, Amara realized that the center wasn't just a building. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of resilience and community. And for the first time, she truly believed that her journey, from waitress to community leader, was only just beginning, a legacy in the making. The Career Pathways Center was a resounding success, but Amara quickly learned that sustaining its momentum required just as much effort as building it. Every day brought new challenges, funding requests to write, partnerships to maintain, and programs to oversee. Yet, Amara approached each task with the same determination that had brought her to this point. One morning, as she walked into her office, she found a stack of letters waiting on her desk. Linda, ever efficient, had neatly organized them. "Fan mail," Linda said with a wink before heading off to oversee the morning programs. Amara picked up the first envelope, curious. Inside was a handwritten note from Tasha, one of the teens she'd met during the center's early days. "Dear Miss Amara, I just wanted to say thank you. The coding classes at the center have been amazing, and now I'm applying for an internship at a tech company. I never thought I'd have the chance to do something like this. You believed in me when no one else did, and that means everything. Sincerely, Tasha." Amara smiled, her chest swelling with pride. She read through the rest of the letters, each one filled with gratitude and stories of transformation. There were kids who had discovered their passions, parents who had found hope, and volunteers who felt like they were part of something meaningful. These letters reminded her that the work she was doing wasn't just about programs and buildings. It was about people. It was about giving them the tools to dream and the confidence to chase those dreams. A new opportunity. A week later, Amara received a call from Mayor Grant, one of the city's most influential leaders. She was surprised, to say the least. She hadn't interacted with him directly before. "Amara, I've been hearing incredible things about the work you're doing at the Career Pathways Center," the mayor said. "We need more initiatives like yours in other parts of the city. Would you be interested in collaborating with us to expand the program?" Amara's mind raced. Expanding the program had always been her long-term goal, but the idea of working with the city was daunting. It meant navigating bureaucracy, dealing with politicians, and taking on a level of responsibility she wasn't sure she was ready for. But it also meant reaching more kids and changing more lives. "I'd love to discuss it further," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "When can we meet?" The mayor arranged a meeting for the following week, and Amara spent every spare moment preparing. She pored over data, created detailed proposals, and practiced her pitch until she knew it by heart. By the time she walked into the mayor's office, she was ready. The meeting was intense but productive. The mayor and his team were impressed by Amara's vision and her track record of success. By the end of the discussion, they had agreed to pilot the Career Pathways model in 3 additional neighborhoods, with funding and support from the city. As Amara left the office, she felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it also meant stepping even further out of her comfort zone. She knew she couldn't do it alone. Building a team. One of Amara's first priorities was assembling a team to help her manage the expansion. She reached out to people she trusted, Linda, of course, but also Coach Rady, who had become a pillar of the youth programs, and Tasha, who was now excelling as a mentor in the tech lab. She even convinced Jamal, now a college freshman on a basketball scholarship, to return during his breaks to inspire the younger kids. "You're building an army," Linda joked as they sat in Amara's office one evening, finalizing plans for the first expansion site. "More like a family," Amara said with a smile. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about all of us working together." The team's enthusiasm was contagious. They threw themselves into the work, organizing community meetings, recruiting volunteers, and ensuring that each new center reflected the needs of its neighborhood. Amara found herself leaning on them more than ever, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. A visit from the past. One afternoon, as Amara was giving a tour of the center to potential sponsors, she spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Earl, the gruff diner regular who had once sparked the confrontation that changed her life, was standing near the basketball court, watching the kids play. Amara excused herself and walked over to him, her curiosity piqued. "Earl," she said, her voice laced with surprise. He turned, his expression sheepish. "Didn't mean to bother you," he said. I heard about what you've been doing here. Thought I'd come see it for myself." Amara crossed her arms, a smile tugging at her lips. "What do you think?" Earl scratched his head, looking uncharacteristically humble. "I think I was wrong about you. About all of this. You're doing something real here, and I can't help but respect that." Amara felt a pang of vindication, but also compassion. "It's never too late to get involved," she said. "We could always use more volunteers." Earl chuckled. "I might take you up on that." A day of celebration. Months later, the first of the new Career Pathways Centers opened its doors. The grand opening was even bigger than the original gala, with hundreds of people turning out to celebrate. Amara stood at the center of it all, marveling at how far they had come. As the ceremony began, Steph Curry took the stage. "When I first met Amara," he said, "she was standing up for what she believed in, even when it cost her everything. That kind of courage and integrity is rare, and it's why we're all here today. Amara, you've shown us what it means to lead with heart. This is your legacy." Amara was called to the stage, and as she looked out at the crowd, she felt a surge of emotion. The kids, the volunteers, the supporters, they were all part of this journey. And for the first time, she truly believed in the impact she was making. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "This isn't just my legacy," she said. "It's ours. It belongs to every kid who dared to dream, every volunteer who gave their time, and every person who believed in what we could do together. This is proof that when we stand together, we can create something extraordinary." The crowd erupted into applause, and as Amara stepped down from the stage, she felt a profound sense of peace. She had started as a waitress in a diner, unsure of what her future held. Now she was a leader, a changemaker, and a beacon of hope for her community. Her journey wasn't over. There was still so much to do. But for the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be, surrounded by a family that believed in her and a legacy it would continue to grow. And as she looked out at the smiling faces around her, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.